Okay, hello again, everybody. You should, at this stage, be reading lesson 2 and should have just finished the section that deals with redemption and exile. What I tried to show in that section, as you will know because you've just read it, is how the Zionist movement essentially reclaimed the classical notions of Galut and Geula, and understood them not just in terms of coming out of exile and going to the land of Israel, but also in terms of all sorts of social and political realities that the Zionist movement, in terms of its ideology, sought to change. Now, what I would like to do in this clip is to try and look at this relationship between Galut and Geula as a way of moving towards a deeper understanding of the questions that we raised in our last lesson about the mystery of the connection between the Jewish people and the land of Israel. If you remember the passage from Rav Kook, which presented the question, gave us a sense of Israel as being something in the soul. Which means that when we are somehow locked out of Israel, we're somehow locked out of our inner being, locked out of our soul. And it means that if we enter the land of Israel, that's perhaps the locus in which we have the potential to rediscover our inner soul. Now, if we think about the Haredi, ultra-Orthodox opposition to Zionism, we could perhaps say that they said, when we get back to our inner soul, that's when we can go back to the land of Israel. Before then, we have to stay outside. Galut is in many ways an ideology. We are in exile. We cannot return to the land. We're in exile from our inner selves. And if we invert that and take a Zionist position, we're reversing the order. And we're saying, return to the land and there discover your inner identity. There discover who the Jewish people really is and who you are. That inversion, whether you're for it or against it, is perhaps a way of framing the pro-Zionist or the anti-Zionist positions that exist in the Jewish world. Now, if we have a look at perhaps the beginning of this whole conversation, where does it start? It starts in Genesis 12. And it starts in the commandment that's given to Abraham, Avram. At the time, his name has not yet been changed. And he's outside of the land. The previous chapter to this one, Genesis 11, ends with a story of Abraham's father saying, I'm heading for the land of Canaan, but he doesn't get there. It tends to suggest that if you set out on your own, you're not going to make it. The journey inwards is a journey that requires some stimulus. And then God said unto Abraham, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto the land that I will show you. God says to Abraham, go to Israel. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and you will be a blessing. And those who bless you will be blessed, and those who curse you will be cursed. And all the families of the earth will be blessed through you. These are verses that we all have known from childhood. But let's look at them in their Hebrew. Get thee out of thy country doesn't capture the incredibly important phrase, Lech lecha me'artzecha. Leave, first of all, your land. Abraham is told that not in Israel, that's your land. That's Abraham's land. Where do you need to go to from your land? You need to go to yourself. Lech lecha. Go to yourself. A journey inwards. And when you can go from the land that's your land, the family that's your family, the place where you are, everything that you are, and discover yourself, lech lecha, go to yourself, then I will make you into a great nation. The meaning of your becoming a great nation is connected to self-discovery. The journey to Israel is the journey to self-discovery. And through that comes blessing. This is the covenant. Not just to you. Actually, not even to you. Well, to you. But primarily through you to all of the nations of the world. Now let's try and unpack this a little bit. Rav Yaakov Nagin, a friend of mine who teaches in Israel today, discusses the way in which Rav Kook, who we've already mentioned, tries to unpack the meaning of this journey of Lech Lecha, the journey to Israel, to the understanding of Israel, to the teaching about Israel, as a journey that takes us from a condition of exile, which is the exile in psychological terms of not knowing ourselves. How many hours do we spend on sofas and in armchairs talking about our childhoods, trying to understand who we are? Go to yourself, journey to yourself, find yourself reflected in the mirror, which is the landscape of the land of Israel. And again writes as follows. On this concept of Lech Lecha, the journey to the self. In the beginning of the Parsha, Hashem, God, calls to Abraham, Lech Lecha, go from your land and your birthplace and your father's house. The Zohar, which is the prime text of Jewish mysticism, explains that the double language of Lech Lecha calls on a person to embark on a journey into himself, or herself, I would add. Lech Lecha, go unto yourself, to know and to fix or to heal yourself. In Hebrew, that word fix is tikkun. That's the word that we are using when we talk about tikkun olam. Now we'll come back to that olam at a later stage. But the olam of tikkun olam, I'll just hint, also refers to yourself. Olam is not just the world, it's your world. It's who you are. And in an awesome teaching in Orot HaKodesh, Rav Kook explains that when a person arrives at an understanding of himself, that's what it means to discover God. Now you can hear that in theological terms, and you can also hear it in humanistic terms. You can hear it symbolically and metaphorically as referring to the depth of your inner being, or you can hear it in more religious terms as referring to God, but not a simplified vision of a great bearded figure in the sky telling us what to do. But the very essence and the very heart of our being is something that we discover, often not by sitting on our own and thinking, but by discussing with other people, by being in contact with others. By engaging, we discover self. That is something that's true, and perhaps uniquely true, of the relationship between the Jewish people and the land of Israel. The journey to Israel is the journey to the self. Let's look at the quote from Rav Kook. He takes the words of the prophet Yechezkel, Ezekiel. I am in exile. That's the galut of galut and geula. The internal I of self. We have sinned with our fathers. The sin of Adam Harishon, of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, was that he became disconnected from his true self. That hardening of heart that allows us to imagine we're on our own. We can do what we like. We're not being watched. What we do doesn't have any impact on anybody else. As if we don't live in a world that's full of networks. We're not part of a web. We become dishonest about the integration of ourself into our surroundings. We imagine ourselves as some kind of independent, free, detached beings, and it's on our own when we turn our back on the full integration of our being into the surroundings that we live in. That's when we become selfish. That's when we sin. That's when we think that to harm somebody else or to not listen to the world around us is a private affair. This is the sin of Adam. He conceded to the snake's advice, lost his selfness, and was thus unable to give a clear answer to God's question, Ayeka. God goes through the Garden of Eden saying to Adam, where are you? Now that that's one that puzzled me as a child. God doesn't know where Adam is. Why does he ask him Ayeka? And what Rav Kook is saying here is that God asks Adam, where are you? Not because he doesn't know, but because he knows that Adam doesn't know. Where are you, Adam? Do you know? Where are you? For he did not know his own soul, for his true self was lost from him. And so the world continues and submerges in the lost I of every individual. And in this environment where we don't know who we are, we don't understand who we are, we misfunction. We become anxious. We become worried. We feel that people aren't paying enough attention to us. We feel that we might be forgotten, that we're not going to be important, that we have to express ourselves so powerfully and impose ourselves on others so much that our presence will be felt not just by them, but by ourselves. The breath of our nostrils. And so the world continues and submerges in the lost I of every individual. The breath of our nostrils, God's anointed. It is not external to us, it is the very breath of our nostrils. Hashem, our God, we will seek. Our I we will seek. Our own selves we will seek. And we will find him. What is Rav Kook saying here? Rav Kook is saying that when God says to Abraham, find yourself, heal the mistake that Adam made when he threw humanity into exile from self-understanding, that will be the blessing. That's what will change the world. And I'm going to give you a clue. I'm going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to tell you where to look. Go to the land that I will show you. And there, the possibilities for self-discovery open up. And we're not answering our question yet, but we're hinting at the direction that will allow us to think of Israel education and of Zionist education as framing the whole conversation about Jewish identity in the deepest sense of self-discovery and self-understanding that allows us to heal so many of the things that people suffer from in our lives, just because we don't know who we are. Now continue and read on.